A wise grandmother once told me, she said, you know, when you see some sort of a disaster that has happened, you see it all of the time, of course, in the headlines of the newspaper, and we just saw that with the terrorist driving the truck into people in New York City. We just saw that. And she said, when something like that happens, she said, you're not going to see it in the headlines probably, and you're not going to see it in the news story. She says, but always look for somebody who was involved in that, who was reaching up to something higher. Something who was cleaning it up, maybe a hidden, ordinary person doing something humble. They're cleaning up the mess. How did somebody who helped and then maybe disappeared in the crowd? They didn't do it for the notoriety. Somebody who responded to the evil by doing good. Some small, ordinary person just like us who responded to the evil and did good in response. She said, always look for that person, because she says, when anything happens that's bad, there is always somebody who's reaching up higher, who's there because God has moved their hearts to do something redemptive, which is to turn the evil into good, is to combat the evil with doing good. She said, there's always somebody there. Look for them. When things go wrong, you look for that person who's reaching up to something higher. And that's a wonderful thing that she told me, because I think it is so true. And I've found it so helpful in life. And that when something goes wrong, look around for that probably hidden person who's doing what Jesus would do. It's remarkable. And it reminds me very much of All Saints. Because when I think of this celebration of All Saints, I think what saints do for us is they help us reach up. They help us to reach up. They inspire us to reach up with their own lives. They pray for us. And what the saints are always asking us to do, what they're always coaxing us to do, is reach up, reach higher. We celebrate the official saints. And so, for me, that has to be St. Ignatius, first of all, first in line, the founder of the Jesuits. I have reached up to his life now for 19 years now. 19 years now. And he changed my life. Utterly changed my life. I couldn't possibly ever be the same. And one of the ways that he did that is, I didn't realize that when I joined the Jesuits, I didn't realize that one of the deepest desires of my life was to follow my heart, was to be able to finally follow my heart, my deepest desire of my heart. And St. Ignatius made that possible for me in a way that changed my life. Because one of the things that he taught us is that we have two loves in our hearts. The reason I had so much trouble following my heart is I thought I only had one love in my heart. And then St. Ignatius makes it so clear, no, you have two loves. You have a false love and you have a true love. And what life is about is discerning. It's about the discernment of those two loves so that you up the odds that more and more you're in touch with your true love, with what your heart really wants. No, not up here, but what it really, really, really wants, so that you can finally follow your heart. It was the greatest gift. It's an incredible gift to be able to follow one's heart. And St. Ignatius made that more possible. His spirituality and the spirituality of the Jesuits, which focuses around that, made that more possible for me in a way that I had hoped for, but never maybe thought that I would be able to actually ever attain. And so I have to thank St. Ignatius. He helped me, and every day helps, encourages, and maybe even demands that I keep reaching up, that I keep trying to reach higher. And we all have saints for whom that's true of us as well. We not only celebrate the official saints, but we also celebrate the unofficial saints, people who haven't been officially recognized by the church, but they were saints to us. And one of those people, because the Jesuits make you go to school for a long time, and one of the things you learn about school when you go to a university, I think everybody knows this who went to a university. The people at the university are not the people who changed the world. Their job is to point you to the first-rate people who changed the world. Their job is to point you to them. And they're to point you to the first-rate people. Go, I see where your heart is. I see what you're interested in. Go study, go read this woman or this man. They're first-rate, and you will have to reach up to them, but they will take you someplace that will change your life. And so that's the job of a teacher at that level, is to keep pointing you to the first-rate people that you have to reach up to as a student. And you might, and if you're lucky, they will point you to someone who's so first-rate, you'll spend your whole life reaching up to their mind, to their work, to their heart. And I was fortunate enough when I was in philosophy to have a wonderful Jesuit friend and scholar who pointed me in the direction of a first-rate mind and soul and spirit that is probably the greatest Catholic philosopher and theologian of the 20th century, Bernard Lonergan. And I have spent 15 years trying to reach up to the mind of Bernard Lonergan, and I'm a rank amateur. I don't even, on the Lonergan scale, I don't even register. But I do know this, he is first-rate. That's a first-rate mind, and that's a first-rate spirit. And I'm going to keep reaching up. I'll reach up to him for my whole life. And one of the things that I loved about him so much, I could talk for hours, but I'm going to keep that much shorter. One of the things that he taught me so much was, don't run away from understanding. Don't run away from thinking. Don't run away from questioning. Don't run away from wondering. Follow it to the truth no matter where it leads you. Because Christians don't have to be afraid of any truth. If it is truth, it belongs to God. And it must be enfolded into the Christian vision. And he demanded, I'll tell you a story about Bernard Lonergan. This is the kind of mind, this is the kind of first-rate heart and mind that I have spent 15 years reaching up to. I have friends who knew him. He was a Canadian Jesuit who died, I think, in the 80s. I, of course, never met him, but there are older Jesuits who studied with him. And so one of them said that one night they had decided Lonergan was giving a lecture, and they were not up for a philosophy lecture that evening. They wanted to go to the movies. So there's a group of them, and they're all going past the door. There's the lecture hall door. They're all going off to the movies, and they hear Lonergan say, "Firstly," and they went off to the movies, and 2 hours later they came back and they walk across the door, and they hear Lonergan say, "57thly." Now that tells you what kind of that's the sort of first-rate mind you reach up to, and you never quite get to. We also celebrate people who are now official saints, but at one time they weren't official saints, but they were recognized by probably even internationally as holy people. And so many of you remember, Mother Teresa. We all recognized her as a saint before she was officially recognized as a saint. And she was somebody that challenged us to reach up. You had to reach up to Mother Teresa. And I love the story about the woman who came to her and said, "I want to work with you in Calcutta." And Mother Teresa apparently looked at her, discerned her soul, and said, get your own Calcutta. Now that's something to reach up to. She challenged that woman, look around you. You don't have to go to Calcutta to see homeless and poor and people who are in need on the streets. Get your own Calcutta. You got to reach up to that. And Jesus, the gospel always impresses me so much. This gospel impresses me so much. There are people that I know who, and these are the other people that we celebrate. They're just like you and me. They're just ordinary people that for us, somehow in our lives, they've touched our lives in a way that they are part of the all saints of our lives. And I think of so many people who, like this scripture that Jesus talks about, or that Jesus proclaims to us, they are people who were sensitive and open and had a courage to face the ordinary sufferings of life. They weren't afraid to look at the person who was in need and to face it, and to face the human feelings it would bring to them, but to face it and then to respond. They weren't afraid to face the weakness of us human persons. They would face it instead of running away from the feelings that it evoked in them, that they needed to help, they needed to do something. Maybe they couldn't solve the person's problem, but they could stand with them and say, I'm with you in this struggle. I won't run away from this. I'll be with you in it, even though I can't probably help much more than that. And they weren't afraid of just being human. Crying with the people who are crying, poor with the people who are poor, peacemakers, being willing for people to speak ill of them. They weren't afraid of that. And though I could tell you the names of people who have been one of the all saints for me, and I'm sure you have them as well. We're going to come to the altar now, and I invite us all that this is one of those times when we really need to remember what we're doing here is Eucharist, which is giving thanks. It is thanksgiving to God. None of us would be sitting here if there weren't some all saints, official and unofficial, that had touched our lives. Let us remember them. St. Ignatius thought that the worst sin of all was the failure to remember to be grateful. Because if we forgot to be grateful, then we got this attitude of I did it my way. And then all the rest of the sins came from that. But if we would remember to be grateful and to have gratitude, we would continue to have the kind of humility and humanity that Jesus calls us to in the gospel. And so let us recall those people, official saints and unofficial saints, who have touched our lives. And we probably wouldn't be sitting here tonight if it wasn't for them.